I'm back from hiatus. Got hella busy with a lot of stuff, and then I was hella sick, and then I got busy again. But we're back now with Kevin McKelligan or CMC Stan account, whichever one you want to call him. We're going to preview the Niners versus the Cowboys and talk about a little bit of 49ers quarterback stuff. And I also just saw Adam Schefter put something out there. We'll probably talk about that a little bit. But let's get right into it.
Wide open, touchdown, 49ers. And to Draymond. Hurry. Watch Stafford go deep and Rodgers were able to do week 3 in that matchup. Toss to Jones and big middle linebacker Fred Warner made the stop.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning into the Polo Show. If you're going to be watching live or watching a replay later, I'm with Kevin McKelligan to talk about 49ers versus Cowboys in the divisional round. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Oh man, I'm doing great. Weekend started off good this morning. Got up early, got some stuff to do today. But I'm excited to be here with you, talk about the Niners and one of the best rivalries, if not the best rivalry in the NFL historically. It's a big matchup. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're all looking forward to it. We've been trying to get Cowboys fans to engage with us, but they're not saying much. So we're emerging as the superior fan base yet again. And when we kick their ass, we're gonna talk our ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because what I've seen on the timeline so far and in spaces is I've not really seen a Cowboys fan really give me a football reason for why they think their team's going to win.
Not
They
one.
kind of just say, they kind of say something like, it might be along the lines of Purdy's Linsanity run is going to end, or we're ready. But then, like right after the Bucks game, people were like, "Oh, it's not fair. The Niners have more time to be ready for the game." So
Right.
I don't really know, but it's going to be a fun matchup. I hate the Cowboys probably just as much as any other franchise I hate, and we know which ones I hate already. I don't even need to get into that. But going into this game with all the history that goes into it, now we get to play them at home. Last year, played them on the road. I think this is going to be a huge moment. Probably no, not even probably. It is the biggest moment for Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
You're a Niners quarterback. You're Mr. Irrelevant, and you're playing the Dallas Cowboys at home with a chance to go to the NFC title game and take this all-time level talented team to go to the Super Bowl. And I say all-time because I mean you got Christian McCaffrey, you got George Kittle, you got Deebo Samuel, who's an All-Pro last year. You've got Brandon Ayuk, you got Trent Williams. Like, what more can you ask for? And going up against the Cowboys. You beat the Cowboys in the playoffs, it really adds to your legacy, especially if you play well. It's one thing if you play like Jimmy and you don't even throw a touchdown pass and you make it a game by throwing a give me interception. But if he plays like he did in the second half of the Seattle game and they come out on top, that's a huge moment for Brock Purdy. And I'll be honest, and we'll talk more about the quarterback situation later, but it's going to be tough to go back to anyone else if Brock Purdy's able to just put together like 3 or 4 touchdowns against somebody like the Cowboys in the playoffs. But digging right into the game, what are your expectations for this game? Who do you think is going to end up standing out on Sunday?
I mean, my expectations, I think the game will probably be close like it was last week, maybe around halftime. I don't think the Niners I think a key for the Niners is to come out and have a fast start because they want to control the game. But I think Dallas is going to maybe throw some stuff that maybe they haven't seen yet, and maybe try to do some of the things that the Chiefs are able to do. Maybe run Dak a little bit early to boost the run game. Because if he can become a factor, that means they have 3 good options. It'd be Dak, Zeke, and Pollard. So I expect the game to be close, but I expect us to kind of pull away, maybe get like a mid to late third quarter turnover, we score a touchdown or field goal to go up by 2 scores and then be in cruise control the rest of the way. For who should stand out, I think some of the playmakers on the Cowboys, like Pollard and CeeDee Lamb, I do think that they're going to have a solid game. I don't think they're going to put up, crazy numbers like DK did last week. He put like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or something like that. They may have a 100-yard receiver, but again, just because they have a 100-yard receiver, that doesn't mean they're going to make a huge impact in the game, right? Depending on when the catches are made, especially if it's in garbage time and we're ahead by 2 or 3 scores. But I mean, I expect the 49ers to win. I think all the fans probably expect them to win. Like I said, a close game early. I think Purdy comes out with maybe just a little bit of pregame jitters, and struggles a little bit early, but settles in because we've seen him kind of struggle early in several games, but get settled in, get comfortable, and then get the ball out to his playmakers, and then they make plays. And, everybody looks good when that happens. If he gets the ball out on time, and he hits guys in stride and plays like we've seen him play, there's no reason the 49ers shouldn't win. So that's kind of my expectations for both teams. I expect us to be able to run the ball effectively. The Cowboys are giving up an average of 4.5 yards a carry, almost 2,200 yards on the year. Last week is kind of an anomaly because the Bucs didn't try to run the ball. They had like 12 rushes for like 50 yards or something like that. So that's not going to be us. We're a run first team. They're a pass first team. And we've got, 4 or 5 guys that can run the ball and take it 20, 30 yards on any explosive play. So those are my expectations. I expect us to run the ball a lot. Purdy may not have to do much. He might have to make some critical third down conversions. But in terms of, I think we're going to really lean on our run game. I could be wrong. This could be a game where Kyle does a lot of play action. He schemes a lot of run looks and he's throwing. But just based on how I shouldn't say the Cowboys' run defense is bad. I would say it's average. It's probably bad to average. I expect us to run the ball a lot. Whereas last week we ran the ball a lot, but it was pretty balanced. So because Seattle, they didn't really have, one part of their defense wasn't really as bad as the other. I think with the Cowboys, their passing defense is better than their run defense. So I expect us to run the ball more.
Yeah, I expect us to run it down their throat also. I think players that might stand out. I really feel like Christian McCaffrey after that, and it might be an obvious answer, but especially after what we heard from those radio hosts in Dallas talking about, we could use injury. Yeah, hamstring would be good. That just it feels like one of those things where it's like, that's not going to age well at all. It just feels like one of those things we're going to end up pulling after the game. And McCaffrey's a beast. This offensive line is pretty good too. He's going to find gaps, and he's going to get one little gap, and he can turn it like 50 yards. We saw him do that in the Seattle game. I think that the physicality is really going to stand. I think it's going to be a really physical game, but I do think we are a more physical team than Dallas, and we saw that last year too. I think one player that's really going to stand out, though, is going to be Charles Omenihu. And he's had a really good year. He was playing well against Seattle as well. And if you remember last year, Bosa against the Cowboys in the wild card round, he went out for the whole second half. I think he had a concussion is what it was. And Charles Omenihu, I think himself had like 1.5 sacks in that half. And because Bosa's probably going to see a lot of double teams, and also just because of who's officiating the game and the way Bosa usually ends up getting officiated, he's probably going to get held all game long. It's probably not going to be called about 90% of the time. So I think a lot of that attention going to Bosa. If the secondary and the linebackers are doing their job in coverage, it's going to give a little bit of time for some coverage sacks maybe. And I think Charles Omenihu might be that guy on the edge to just get to Dak Prescott. They do need to put pressure on Dak Prescott, by the way, though, because, this offense, I don't think that their offense is as scary as it was last year, obviously, when they were number 1 in scoring, just because losing Amari Cooper just changed everything. I mean, I remember what Dak kind of looked like before they got Amari Cooper, in that season they traded for him. Then once they got Amari Cooper, the difference that it made. And we're seeing Dak the way he's playing this year without Coop. It's not looking very good. It's really Jimmy-esque. If you look at the touchdown interception ratio, he had I don't even remember how many games in a row with an interception. It just started to kind of feel like he's the type of QB now where he's going to give you that freebie opportunity to take the
Mhm,
ball
mhm.
away. And against a defense like this that's fast and angry, it's not Tampa Bay, you know. And the tougher part for Dallas also, like you mentioned, Tampa Bay not really running the ball. It's because they suck at running the ball. So they were
They
never
can't run the
going to,
ball. Yeah.
yeah, they were never going to use the running game as a piece of their game plan to try to beat Dallas. It was going to have to be one-dimensional Brady, and that's why Tampa Bay's really been bad all season. Um, they're just not a balanced offense. I
Mhm.
remember when they lost to the Panthers the week that we were playing the Chiefs. I think Brady threw it like almost 60 times in that game. So
Yeah.
of course, Dallas is a good enough team where they can stop a one-dimensional offense with a stationary quarterback. I know it's Brady, but he's still stationary. Um, so I do think it's going to be really physical. We'll run the ball down their throat. I do expect the defense to play better in the first half than they did in the first half of the Seattle game. Um, and I think that that's kind of what I want to get into next is the players that worry you most, because I have a few, but I'll let you kind of go first, whether it's guys on the Cowboys you feel like might give us trouble, or if it's certain Niners you feel like might have a bad matchup this week. What kind of players concern you this week?
So I'll start with the Cowboys. There are 3 players that I think could potentially give some trouble. One, I'll start on the offense with Tony Pollard. I mean, I think he's maybe one of the top 5 or 6 most explosive running backs, and I'm just talking about just pure acceleration and speed. I don't think he's that elusive, and he's not like a bruiser, right? I don't think he's a guy that's going to be. He's not like a Debo who's going to be dragging defenders and breaking tackles. But if you can get him out in space, um, just on pure acceleration alone, like Raheem Mostert used to do that. I mean, he's got elite speed, but his acceleration was unbelievable. Pollard has that same type of explosion. He doesn't have the same top end speed. He's pretty decent out of the backfield. He's like I said, he's not elusive. He's more of a one cut guy. So if you give him any sort of hole, he's going to cut through it pretty quick. Um, but I've been hearing like, oh, Pollard's better than McCaffrey, and all
Skip
this
Bayless.
stuff. He's not nearly the route runner. He's not nearly the physical runner. He's not nearly the pass catcher. I mean, they're talking about him like I tweeted. It's like he's Walter Payton or something. Like we're going against this all-time running back. I don't see that. He's a very good player.
He's
Definitely
good, but
somebody we have to prepare for. But I mean, our linebackers are so fast. I'm not worried about him really getting on the edge unless they really scheme something up to get him in space. I saw a couple of times that the Dallas Cowboys used him on like a delayed toss or these slow developing run plays. That's not going to work against us because our run defenders on the inside with Armstead and Kinlaw are so good at opening up holes for the linebackers. If they want to run inside, it's got to be quick hitting plays to not give our linebackers time to fill holes or have Hufanga come down and run support. Or if we're playing nickel, to have Jimmy Ward come in and run support. He's very good at that too. So they're going to have to scheme up Pollard in space.
yeah.
And how they're going to do that, Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy are going to have to come up with some sort of way to get maybe our linebackers flowing one way, get Pollard out on the edge on the other way, so he's one-on-one with Lenore or Jimmy Ward or Travarius Ward or Gibson, something like that. That's the only way I could really see him doing damage. But I'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, Michael Parsons is now a 2-time All-Pro. You can't deny that he's aside. I mean, even with the quarterback, including Dak, I think Parsons is probably the best player on their team.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable saying that. And you always have to account for him on every play. But we all know that Kyle Shanahan is a mastermind of taking their best player out of the game. I think Aaron Donald in like 12 career games against us has like, I don't know how many sacks. Like he's just not very effective for whatever reason. I think that's the mind of Kyle. I think they specifically game plan and they have good enough players to take him out of the game. And then I will say their defensive line is pretty formidable. I'm not too worried about their secondary. I know Trayvon Diggs is a really good cover guy. But we saw what Brandon Ayuk did to him last year.
Yeah.
And now we have more weapons on the team. We're healthier. I mean, if they want to get Brandon Ayuk and they want to put Trayvon Diggs one-on-one, I think Ayuk's going to route him up, no problem. But I'll say DeMarcus Lawrence because DeMarcus Lawrence has been a very consistent player for the Cowboys. He's put up double-digit sacks, I believe, multiple times. He's not the best run defender, but he can definitely get after the quarterback. So if you maybe something that they could do is they could load one side with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons to one side. Obviously, the weaker side is McGlinchey in pass protection. I'm confident in McGlinchey in terms of his run blocking. He's one of the best run blocking tackles in the league. But if we get to like a second and third and long, or we can't establish a run and we got to pass a lot, I could see them overloading to one side. Kind of like what we do in our wide nine. We put 3 guys to one side and we have one-on-one matchups, and then we get Bosa or Ebukam on the other side in the wide nine and do some sort of stunt. That's a little worrisome. But honestly, man, like I'm pretty confident in the rookies that have been playing, or I shouldn't say, well, Burford's a rookie, but Banks is a second-year player. Brendel, I mean, our offensive line is probably the weakest part of our offense, but they've been playing so well and so cohesive. Am I worried about the Dallas pass rush? A little bit, but I'm confident that they're going to hold up. But so my 3 players would be Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Tony Pollard. I mean, somebody might go off, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, but not likely.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that for me, it's also Pollard. I'm going to say also Zeke too. I know Zeke is not what he used to be. My only reason I have the concerns mainly with both those running backs is they were struggling against Kenneth Walker in the Seahawks game. That was what was aggravating me the most sitting there in the stands probably was, holy shit, we can't stop the running game right now. And it just kind of felt like, if this was a better team, they would be running the ball down our throats right now because, Geno Smith, great story he's had, great year he's had, but it's not like he's an elite level quarterback. Like I would still take Dak over him at this point. With Zeke and Pollard and knowing that Dallas has a better defense than Seattle does too, I don't want to get into a situation where we're kind of nervous at halftime, like shit, we're down by 1 point at the end of the half and we're not stopping the run really well. It's those first downs that piss me off the most is when it's 1st and 10 and we allow like a 5-6 yard carry and all of a sudden we're setting our defense up not really in a position to succeed. The good thing is our defense is good enough to the point where even when that happens, they end up forcing punts or they force turnovers. I just don't want to put our defense in a situation where, or I don't want our defense to be put in a situation where, all of a sudden it's like the Cowboys feel like they can do whatever they want because I feel they're going to go with a lot of quick game too. So if you're allowing the running game to just give them a quick 5-6 yards on first down and that quick game, that quick pass can now turn into a 5-yard gain and move the chains. I don't want that pattern to keep continuing. The good thing is D'Amico Ryans in the second half is, I don't know what it is. They go into halftime with like whatever the Warriors used to do last year at halftime where they just come out in the third quarter and just punch teams in the mouth. But I'd really like to just get off to a really good start, separate ourselves a little bit, just to make the defense's job a little easier. Maybe you get to a point where you force Dallas to be a little more one-dimensional, kind of get them off their rhythm a little bit. Because I still don't know how to feel about this offense, being the Niners offense. I still don't know how to feel about us playing from behind in any situation late in a playoff game. I still get nervous about that just because although Purdy's been good, I haven't seen enough of Purdy yet still in those situations to feel really confident. But he's playing great. And that's why those 2 running backs worry me. Obviously, Micah Parsons is up there. I could totally see them in certain situations on like a 3rd down, maybe just saying, you know what, Micah, go line up on Mike McGlinchey. Fuck it. Like, let's see if you can beat him. Just because sometimes it comes down to those very little matchups and every snap counts. And if you can get a mismatch like someone like Parsons, who's an all-pro, on someone like Mike McGlinchey, who sometimes tends to be really good until that one play where you really need him to be solid, and then he slips up. That stuff kind of worries me. CeeDee Lamb doesn't worry me that much. I guess the only concern I have for the Niners, really, other than stopping the run early and often, is Lenore. He was okay, but a lot of times throughout the season, Lenore, especially in the later half of the season, was getting picked on. And it's not like he's a bad corner. It's just the rest of the defense is so good. Like Charvarius Ward, who actually was, DK had a good game against him, but
Yeah.
still. Travarius Ward most of the year has been a really locked down corner, and your safeties are really good. Your defensive line is really good. You have the best linebacking core in the league. So at some point in offense is to look to somewhere, okay, where are they not elite? And that's Lenore. I mean, he
Mhm.
basically came into the season basically as the fourth string corner because you had Mooney Ward, Emmanuel Mosley, and they're ready to slide Jason Verrett out there when he came back, but then he tore his
Mhm.
Achilles. So Lenore is
Mhm.
really like their fourth string corner out there, and he's a young player. So that worries me a little bit if they find ways to kind of pick him apart. I don't know if Travarius Ward's going to travel with CD, but other than CD, none of their pass catchers really scare me. So it's really just if you can
Mhm.
stop that running game right away and force them to feel like they need a pass against us to win the game, I think we're in a really good position. Um, that's pretty much all that worries me looking at this game so far.
Would
I don't
you
think
would you have Ward travel with CD? Because I could see that, but I could also see like a guy like Michael Gallup trying to take over the take over the game. So you know what? It's interesting because I think Lenore on CD is a better matchup because I think Lenore is more physical than CD. CD is not a very physical receiver. I
it's
think
true.
Gallup is more physical. So if you put physical on physical with Travarius Ward and Michael Gallup, and you challenge CD Lamb to take over the game at receiver against Lenore, I think Lenore, Lenore is a good he's a good corner.
Yeah,
I think Lenore's strength, actually with Travarius Ward, I think both of their strength is physicality.
physicality. Yeah,
Um, and I think if you establish early that I'm more physical, if you're Lenore and I'm more physical than CD, I'm gonna just man you up all game. I think that can get into CD's head, and because he's the type of guy where if you feed him a lot, he really gets rolling. But if he doesn't get the ball, you can just take him out of the game. Um, and you could travel Travarius Ward with him, but I think putting Lenore on CD might actually be better. I don't know who's more physical between Ward and Lenore. They're both pretty physical.
yeah,
But I don't know. I worry more about Gallup in this type of game because they might be able to scheme him open where, you
yeah.
know, CD he can kind of work on his own. I don't know, man. Who would you rather have on CD and Gallup? Because I think really you could interchange them, but if you put Lenore on CD, that might kind of mess with his head a little bit more. I don't know.
I think if it was like a crucial fourth down situation, I might want Mooney Ward on there.
Yeah, sure.
But in terms of the whole course of the game, I don't even know. I don't even know if I would prefer Mooney travels or not. I don't know if they're
Mhm.
gonna what they're gonna do. I'd probably be fine with letting them both get snaps against them.
Sure.
Just because I trust the whole defense in general, just to do their job. And my only worry with Lenore is if he has one of those games where he's just like toast for like a quarter, and then that quarter comes
Yeah.
to bite us in the ass. If it's just like a few crucial catches that leads to a touchdown drive, that could be the difference in the game. So that's the only thing that I mean when I'm talking about Lenore being a concern. Um, and it's literally like I said, it's not even just because it's not even me saying I think he's a bad corner. It's the whole defense is so good. At
Yeah.
some point in there, you have to find what the weakest link is, even though their weakest link could be like a strong point of another team's defense that's average.
Yeah.
That's just how good this defense is. But other than that, I don't really have any worries. The Cowboys scared me a lot more in the middle of the season than they did the back end of the season where they
Mhm,
started to lose a
mhm.
string of games. Dak was not playing really well. They lose that game to Washington. They lose that game to Jacksonville. I'm not really worried about them at this point anymore. At one point, I thought they might be the toughest matchup for us, but I was wrong about that. It's definitely the Eagles are the worst matchup
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
Now let's kind of talk about a little bit what we were talking about earlier in terms of what needs to happen for the Niners to win this game. We kind of talked about it earlier, but let's
Mhm.
dive into some specific keys to victory and the certain things that could lead to trouble. Because I have a few, but I'm curious to hear yours.
Yeah. I'll kind of start with maybe number three. I'll do three keys. My third one, we've had some people kind of bring up in our Twitter spaces that we're the number one team in terms of field position giving up and field position starting four. I think that's credit to Wisnowski. That's credit to the special teams. That's credit to the kickoff coverage. I think if we can do that and just have an average game, just do what we've been doing on special teams, and you make the Cowboys go 85 yards off a punt, or you make them, kick off, if a touchback or whatever is 75 yards, that's pretty standard. But if the kickoff coverage can even get them to start at their own 20 instead of 25 and make them go an extra 5 yards, every yard is important in the NFL, let alone the playoffs. So if we have a solid special teams day, where even McLeod on some returns gets us to the 35 or 40 starting position, I think that is a huge key, because if you really think about it, I mean, 20 yards in the NFL is the difference between a punt and kicking a field goal. That's 3 points or nothing at all. So the special teams has been very solid. Credit to the special teams group and their coaching staff. So that's going to be my third key, is making Dallas go 80 yards, 85 yards in 7.5 to 8 minutes. I don't think they're an offense that can really do that. I think just Dak hasn't been playing consistent quarterback enough to where he's going to be able to complete 7 or 8 passes on a drive, go 8 of 9 for 75 yards and a touchdown. I just don't see that. So that'll be my first key, is just very solid special teams play. I think my second key is the defense has to play opportunistic and aggressive. I don't want to see soft coverage. I mean, I understand if we're up late in the game, but I want to see an aggressive defense. I want to see press man. I want to see D'Amico Ryans utilize this pass rush. I mean, we can get home with 4. He's going to dial up stuff to where maybe Dak hasn't seen this type of rotation in coverage, or some sort of zone or anything like that. I know Dak's pretty good against the zone, and he struggled a little bit more in man coverage. So I would like to see the Niners play aggressively on defense. And when they play aggressive, I think that's when they'll be able to maybe get a couple early picks and put the game away by, midway through the third quarter. I don't want to see a conservative defense, because if you remember last year in the NFC Championship game, we were playing very solid defense,
yeah.
and then for some reason Tart dropped the pick, but it just felt like we took the gas we took our foot off the gas a little bit. And I want to see an aggressive type of defense. I want to see press man. I want to see guys close to the line of scrimmage, because I don't really think anybody on Dallas can really beat us deep, unless we have some sort of breakdown in coverage. They don't have a Tyreek Hill or or a DK who's 6'3" and runs a 4.3 40. Like, there's nobody that can just take the top off. So my thing is I want to see close to the line of scrimmage. I want to see physical defense. So that's going to be my second key. And then the third key is obviously going to be, I mean, you could say Brock Purdy, but I think just a balanced game. I know I said I want like 40 rushes. I've been pounding the table for 40 rushes this week. If you can do that, and still maintain balance in terms of, third down conversions, Purdy getting the ball out quick, just a consistent all-around solid game on offense. We may not score the same amount of points. I think we've been averaging like 34 points on offense with Brock Purdy. I don't think we scored that many, but I do want to see some balance, if not a little bit heavier side on the run game. I want to see a lot of different players getting the ball out of the backfield or on jet sweeps. I don't want to just see McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell getting the ball 20 times each. I want to see maybe some Ayuk runs. I want to see some creativity that way. So I think Kyle's going to be able to scheme up plays like that. We've seen McLeod get an outside sweep and take it to the house. So, I mean, there's a lot of different players on offense. So I think just the running game, just being able to be disciplined in the running game, no holdings. We don't want to have a 20-yard run play, that sets us up in field position, and then, you have a holding call, and that sets us, at a 3rd and 18 or something like that. So, or 2nd and 18. So those can be my keys. Fundamental on offense, no penalties, don't beat yourself, aggressive defense, and field position.
Yeah, those are good ones. And the Niners special teams has been so much better this year. It started out the season like we made those key signings to upgrade the special teams, and we still looked like ass. And then at some point, middle of the season, it just really kicked into another gear. For me, my keys, the first one is just going to be win the game at the line of scrimmage on both ends, on offense and defense, but especially defense. Like I was talking about before, about how they kind of struggled at first to stop the run against Seattle. I
Mm,
want to stop the run right at the line of scrimmage. I want the guys up front, the defensive line, the linebackers hit those holes, and I want them to just be a force. I don't want them to kind of get ran over for an extra 3 or 4 yards on those carries from Zeke or
sure.
Pollard. So I really want to just win that game of physicality right at the line of scrimmage and force Dallas into a lot of second and third and long situations. Um, which is funny because it's weird how a lot of times third and long has been the Niners' weakness for whatever reason. But
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah.
going to bank on third and long with Dak Prescott the way he's played this year. They don't have like a really deep wide receiving core like we were talking about earlier. So I think that's just going to put you in really good position to succeed. And of course, if you're forcing them to punt early on and forcing them to drive the length of the field and they're punting on like third and long and you're getting 3 and outs, you're giving your offense a better chance of succeeding. And then on offense, just winning at the line of scrimmage, creating those holes for Christian McCaffrey and, giving Brock Purdy the time to sit in the pocket and make the right reads and just, sling it whenever
Mhm.
however much we decide to throw the ball this weekend. My second key, it's not that complicated. It's really just get Debo the ball.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
make him like the focal point of the offense. Because remember what we were able to do last year to teams with Jimmy G at quarterback, so limited, stationary, doesn't throw the ball away, forces mistakes. But Debo, just on the simple, like could be a screen pass, he can catch a ball behind the line of scrimmage and take it 50, 70, 80 yards and score touchdowns. And I remember what he did to the Cowboys last year. They couldn't really handle him, especially on that one play where he literally just told Kyle, just give me the ball. And the next play,
Mhm.
handoff, and he scores a touchdown. Debo makes this offense so much easier for everybody because obviously you have McCaffrey and you have Kittle, who has been
Mhm.
having a really good year with Purdy, and you have Ayuk, who's really, I think, established himself as a wide receiver one. But when you have Debo in that wide back role and being involved and getting the ball and getting those touches, it just makes the whole offense so much easier. And I think just kind of demoralizes the defense of like, what the hell are we
Definitely.
supposed to do when this
Mhm.
dude is just catching a screen pass and taking it 25 yards with all the other shit we have going on in our offensive scheme and all
Yeah.
the other routes that we have and everything in Kyle Shanahan's bag. So I think if you get Debo involved early and often, we see how he kind of took over that Seahawks game. It's going to make things a lot easier to be able to put up
Definitely.
30 plus points on this defense. My last key, more frustration from the first half of the Seattle game, red zone offense. Or anytime you're even close to scoring position on offense, you got to capitalize with touchdowns, not field goals. I
Mhm.
think how many field goals did we attempt in that first half? Was it like
It was
three
only
or
like
three or
3 or
four
4.
field
Yeah.
goals? Like,
Mhm.
and we still almost scored 50 on that team. So if we're
Right.
capitalizing those possessions where we're going for 3 points and turning it into 7, like every point matters. And at that point, that's the difference between you might end up going home on a last second field goal or going to an
Right.
NFC title game to play Philly or host New York.
Mhm.
And it's really funny because their kicker Maher, who missed like 4 PATs, whatever it was, or 4 kicks. Um, wouldn't it be like the most like depressing Niners shit ever if it comes
Oh,
down to a
bro.
game-winning field goal and Maher, who couldn't hit shit the week before, nails a
It's like a
game-winning field goal
52
down the middle.
yarder or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really don't wanna be in that kind of situation, and it just sounds like some Niner type shit just based on the last, like, 10 years that would happen, so
Oh god.
you gotta capitalize those possessions where you're in position to score 7 points and get the 7 points. I love Robbie Gould. It's been a little off to me this year compared to last year, but I do still trust him, but I don't wanna be in a position where we're counting by threes, um, especially up against any team this late in the playoffs at this point. Any given Sunday, you never know what can happen. You want every single point you can get. So those are my keys. It's just the red zone offense,
Mhm.
winning it in the trenches and on the line of scrimmage, and just getting Debo involved. But
I
you
think
kind of
just
mentioned it. Oh yeah, go ahead.
no, I just say just real quick. I think kind of on the flip side of that too. I think Dak is actually really good in the red zone. So
Yeah.
how is our defense going to do um, to stop him? I think he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the red zone this year. And they're scoring. I mean, there's even though their defense is giving up a lot of points, they are still scoring a lot of points too. So we can't ignore the fact that when they get inside the 25 or the 20, they have been putting it in the end zone. And so I think for us, again, sometimes we have breakdowns in coverage. I mean, they're going to be disciplined and focused all game, but just really focusing on assignments and making sure if you're playing a zone, if you're playing man, that there's just no second guessing what's going to happen because I don't want to see all of a sudden Dak just throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns and I want them to earn it. Like I want them to have to. Like I don't want Dak just throwing the ball into the end zone in wide open zones. I want
Yeah.
him to have to like check it down to where they're going to have to break a few tackles to score. And I just don't want him just dotting up our defense in the red zone because he's been pretty good at it. But something also you touched on, the offenses that have been really giving us trouble are more dynamic offenses where they can run motion. They're running jet sweeps, and a lot of the time, the Cowboys, they don't really have that. I mean, they could put CD in motion, they could put Pollard in motion. It's not really a staple of their offense. They're more of kind of just line it up. Let's say on like a 2nd and 8, they'll run, a 3-by-1 set and just get set. And I don't think that really bothers us that much if there's not a whole lot of motion or where our defense is going to be aggressive to one side and they go to the other. There's not a whole lot of that. Kellen Moore can be pretty vanilla in his play calling. So I think that's something that plays to our strength because we can get set up and communicate rather than, if they start doing a fast motion with CD to one side and it's a pitch to Pollard. It's not really a staple of their offense. So that's something that they're going to have to do. That's maybe a little bit uncomfortable. They'll obviously prepare for it. They're going to watch the Chiefs game. They're going to watch the Falcons game, which gave our defense trouble. But those are just some things that I want to see how Kellen Moore, what are they going to do on offense? Because traditionally they're pretty vanilla and they just let Dak pick apart a zone or something like that on 2nd, 3rd, and long.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all true. And No Border Sports brought something up that I wanted to allude to kind of be our last couple topics here. I want to talk quarterback stuff. Before I dive into other stuff that people have been talking about the last few days, what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy at this point in the playoffs and, the way that he's leading the team, the way the team's responded to him, the numbers that he's put up that are at historic levels and some are just at the top of the league right now in terms of like passer rating. I think he's number 1 in like passer rating against the rush, like when he's rushed or something like that under pressure. So what are your thoughts on Purdy at this point? I'm curious.
Well, if you listened to our Twitter space last week, you probably this is not a proper representation. Not a proper representation of
this
what
is your time. This is your time to have the floor and address that.
Yeah, space. No. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on that day, but I think that's not how I actually feel about him. I've been really impressed with how he's played. I think so we kind of talked about this before. When you're used to something and you're used to watching something for so long, you just get so used to it. And for the longest time we watched Jimmy Garoppolo, who's not a bad player, but he's just not a poised quarterback. He's just not. And when you see somebody come in who's got that type of calmness, that type of leadership, that type of command of the offense. And my dad, so I talk about this with him. He'd always say that these guys like Joe Montana and Steve Young, I'm not comparing Brock to them, but they were like the general of the offense. And whatever they said or whatever type of mentality or whatever type of body language, just not even just play, just body language, just generalship of the offense, making sure everybody's set, knowing everybody's assignments. I think that's something we haven't seen in a very long time. I think just the way he carries himself off the field too is a testament of his kind of quiet confidence. You can kind of tell that he's got some swagger to him, So off the field, I think he carries himself very well. And on the field, you can see that he's just very calm. He doesn't really get flustered. We've seen a couple times where he can flush out and get sacked, but for the most part, he's very poised. He is able to do what Kyle Shanahan asked him to do, and that's all we've been really asking of our quarterback. And so when you're used to seeing something that isn't what Brock Purdy is doing, you may go to an extreme of, oh, wow, like he's the best quarterback we've had since Steve Young. Like, I don't think so. Like Colin Kaepernick was an absolute stud. So, but I will say what we've seen from him, the calm and the poise, is something that we haven't really seen since. Yeah. I mean, Jeff Garcia was like that. Jeff Garcia was very poised, was able to use his legs to get the ball out. So I've been very impressed with him. I mean, he had a perfect quarterback rating in the second half last week. I mean, what
Yeah.
you can't ask for much. You can't ask for more.
Can't.
So I've been impressed with him. I don't really see any major accuracy issues. A couple throws were off, but for the most point, he's getting the ball on time and on target, which is really all you really need. So I think he's doing what he needs to do. He's doing so. What we what we used to talk about with Garoppolo was we just needed him to do the bare minimum.
Be average.
Just do the bare minimum in Kyle Shanahan's offense, and he struggled at times to do that.
Mhm.
I think Purdy is doing the bare minimum, but he's also making several plays a game
Yeah.
with his legs or throws that Jimmy wouldn't make. So I don't want to discredit Purdy and say, "Oh, he's just doing the bare minimum." He's doing more.
Still more. Yeah.
He's doing more. And I think that we were so used to just not having that we're all of a sudden like, wow, like this guy's a franchise quarterback. He very well could be. Do I think that this is some sort of Linsanity run? It's possible. But you can't deny that the kid is just balling right now.
He is.
And we'll talk about discussions in the offseason. I mean, we got number 6 on our mind. But I think at this point, you, just in my personal opinion, and I'm a Trey fan, I think the job is still Trey's. But if we progress in the playoffs and we do win a Super Bowl, I think that is a topic of conversation. Some people will say Purdy deserves the job now. The locker room's going to want him to be the quarterback. That's absolutely fair. But just in my opinion, I think Trey is the superior talent. I don't think there's any denying that. He's the more physically gifted quarterback. I think in terms of IQ, they're probably very similar. I think Brock is very, very smart. He's got a ton of experience under his belt. So to me, that's what I think. I think let's just say, just hypothetically, we lose on Sunday. We lose tomorrow. I think the job is Trey's, personally. But if we advance to the NFC Championship game and Brock has a Joe Montana-esque performance where he goes 3 touchdowns, no picks, clean game, I might think about it.
Yeah.
So those are just my thoughts. But you can't deny the kid is balling. Like, he's playing amazing, and we can't ask for any better because he literally had a perfect quarterback rating. Like, he can't.
He did. Yeah, that second half was lights out. Also, by the way, Swan, careful with this emoji right here. If there are any USC fans in the chat, you're about to give them flashbacks. So just be careful with that. Imagine losing a bowl game to a college team whose mascot's a wave. That's crazy. Fuck USC. All right. Anyways, my thoughts on Brock Purdy. I really like Brock Purdy. Like, people think I'm like a Brock Purdy hater because I will critique like certain things I see. The only reason I do that is because I think there are a lot of people just drinking Brock Purdy Kool-Aid into thinking like, okay, we need to lock this guy to be a franchise quarterback. I'm not doubting that maybe he turns into that, but are we not going to remember what we did with Jimmy Garoppolo when we went 5-0 and we were undefeated with him? And we beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, who were a good team that year. We put 40
They went to the
points
AFC Championship game that year.
Yeah, exactly. And they that was a huge moment for us. And we threw him all that money, didn't franchise tag, and we were ready. And I was victim of that. I was ready to give Jimmy G like the crown of franchise quarterback at the time.
Me too.
Like a lot of people were. And now we've been spending the last few years trying to replace him. So with this loaded team around us, I mean, you look at Jimmy G. When we got Christian McCaffrey, he did not throw a single interception with McCaffrey on the field. That made a huge difference. So that's why I'm saying I don't really want to just put my foot 100% on the gas and say for the future, this guy is our franchise QB. I see a lot of people trying to do the Photoshops of him and like Joe Montana. And I think it's exactly what you're saying is having Jimmy for all these years, I think is kind of, made us forget a little bit of what it's like to have a quarterback who is not so much of a liability all the time. Like when I'm watching Jimmy G play football and he's in the pocket and he's tap dancing, I'm nervous. Like every pass beyond like 8 yards feels like the most difficult pass ever. Like every single time that Jimmy's back there with Brock Purdy, I feel a lot more calm. He extends plays, like you're saying. He doesn't just do bare minimum. He does more. That play to Brandon Ayuk when he dropped the touchdown, that was some Mahomes level shit. Like I'm not trying to say he's Patrick Mahomes, but that was some Mahomes type stuff where you'd see it on ESPN on loop nonstop on Twitter. So I really like Brock, and I'm really confident with him, which is something I never thought I would say about a 7th-round rookie. I didn't expect him to be this good, and I do think most people that pretend they knew he'd be this good are just completely fucking lying. But if you just, it's amazing because you listen to what the reports are saying in camp, basically, compared to Trey and people talking about having their Trey Lance and Jimmy G discussions. Brock Purdy was never really in the picture to legitimately take this starting job, and it makes me really wonder, like, what was camp like? What was practice like when Purdy was there and Jimmy was there? Because how has this guy not been starting the whole time? And it's really funny because I remember this one clip specifically, and it was some bozo came at me that mentions, I forgot who it was, but there was like this practice clip of Jimmy rolling out to his left, throwing to like some trainer, so I don't know, some coach,
And
just a
like
rollout.
airmailing.
He either airmailed it or like hit the floor or something, and then like in the very last part of the video, you see Purdy make the same throw and it's perfect accuracy. And then some dude was like, he's not even throwing to a receiver. And I was like, Purdy just threw the exact same human being. I don't like, it's just little shit like that we would look at.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny to think about. It's like, what did those practices look like that made the coaches say, oh, Jimmy's definitely the better quarterback here? Because I don't know if it was politics because they're paying him more, because he's more experienced. Maybe it's because the locker room believed in him more. I don't know, but Brock Purdy is levels above Jimmy Garoppolo from what I've seen. So he has actually upgraded this team. It's really cool to see. It's an awesome story, obviously, the whole Mr. Irrelevant stuff. But um, my thing with Purdy is I kept saying pretty much all year ever since he took over, I'm not going to be fully sold, if that makes sense, until I see him in the playoffs because of
Mhm.
what we had with Jimmy. And after seeing what he did against Seattle, at least in the second half. The first half, I was more critical. He was missing
Sure.
some reads. He had some bad throws, but he's also a rookie at the same time. It was just I didn't want to buy into that whole drink the Kool Aid thing. But now that I saw
Yeah.
the second half and saw how he responded to that first half, um, I'm a lot more sold on Brock Purdy than I was before last week.
Mhm.
To just go into it as a rookie in your first ever playoff game, you're going up against a division rival. You're playing this team for the second time for him.
Mhm.
Um, that's a really tough matchup to have. I mean, any given Sunday playoff games, they're really hard to win. Any game in the NFL is really
Definitely.
hard to win, and
Definitely.
to be putting up 30 points consistently with this team, like we could say, yes, he has so many weapons around him, which is true. But when you have this
Not
many
everybody
weapons
can do it,
around you,
but not
exactly,
everybody can do it.
not everyone can do it. Jimmy wasn't able to do that,
Yeah.
and also you should be dominating teams offensively when you have this many weapons. So it really just means you are doing your job. So um, that's kind of what I wanted to segue into the next part of this conversation. Uh, Looking at the quarterback situation we have going into next year, we'll talk about it a little bit here because I know a lot of people are
Mhm.
more focused on getting number 6. At what point for you is Brock Purdy locked in for QB1 next season? People in the chat can respond to this too. Like, at what point are you going to say, you know what, this is Purdy's job? Because for me, where I'm at now after the Seattle game is because before that I was thinking, Trey's way too talented. And I
Mhm.
still think this. I still think Trey's way more talented than him. His ceiling is much higher. I think you'll get to a point with all these contracts, you're going to need to actually have the potential to have elite quarterback play. And I think Trey Lance's abilities alone give you a higher chance to do that.
Sure.
So, of course, I would like to see Trey Lance get that time to develop. But at this point, instead of saying, oh, no, Trey, it's still got to be Trey, I want to see a competition next year now where I want to see,
Mhm.
because if Trey Lance is that dog, he'll go out there in camp and he'll win that job regardless. But
Sure.
if for whatever reason he doesn't and Purdy is playing well and is keeping that job, I'm fine with it because I'm seeing him produce right now. And I think he'll be able to continue to do that. And I'll be solid with a deep quarterback room next year again, just in case something goes sideways. But at what point for you do you sit here and say Purdy's QB1 next year? Has to be slotted in as a starter.
Well, me being the emotional fan that I am, to say the least, for me, it was he's got to win the Super Bowl and he's got to be Super Bowl MVP. That's where I was. Um, but that was before the playoffs started. I went crazy at halftime. Everybody knows that. But I've been giving him credit all week. For me, it's now it's as if we win the Super Bowl, and even if he doesn't play great, I think there should be I would say it should be 85 I should 80 to 85% his job next year. Unless Trey comes in and just wins the job, like you said, outright, then Trey deserves it. I think we got to get to the Super Bowl for him to earn the job or have at least an 85 to 90% chance. Because you invested so much in this kid.
Mhm.
And you have to remember, we're also paying him like $9 million a season.
Yeah.
So not only it was the draft picks, it's the contract, the $36 million contract that he's making on his rookie deal. And you also have to remember those extra first round picks were probably going to be midway through the first round or at the end of the first round. That's another 4 to 5 million. So really you invested like $20 million into Trey in terms of draft capital, and then you're paying him another 36 on top of it, what you're paying him on his rookie deal.
Mhm.
That's a ton of money. And so you have to figure out what you have in him. In my personal opinion, I think Brock Purdy's got to get to the Super Bowl in order for it to be his job 85, 90%. That's just me. Because I'm a big believer in Trey. I'm a believer in Brock. Like, no doubt going into next season, if they're both on the roster, we're going to have the best quarterback room in the league. Because
Yep.
we have a guy that had just been to a Super Bowl, made a deep playoff run, and then if Trey is the backup, then we have the most talented backup in the league as well. And our good friend Chris Roscoe always talks about how we haven't had healthy quarterbacks back-to-back seasons since 2013 and 2014. I hope to God that Brock Purdy never gets injured in his NFL career. But the 49ers have struggled to keep quarterbacks healthy.
Yeah.
And it's just the game. Like sometimes, Trey went down on that run up the middle. Jimmy got hurt trying to make a play, and stuff like that happens. And over the course of a 17-game season, I mean, this year as well, I believe the most amount of quarterbacks have ever played in the NFL. It's like 65 or 66 quarterbacks or something like that. We're on quarterback 3. Some teams are on their quarterback 3. I mean, the Dolphins had Tua start, they had Teddy Bridgewater play, and they had Skylar Thompson start a playoff game. So you have to have a deep quarterback room in this league unless you have these elite guys that for somehow like even Mahomes, like the year they went to the Super Bowl and they beat us, I think he missed a few games.
Yeah, he had a knee injury. I remember
Like
because
Josh
I was
Allen
terrified.
missed a few games. Like
I
these
traded for him in
guys,
fantasy.
these guys get injured. And so whether whoever starts next year, for me, if we get to the Super Bowl and win, I might even let up a little. If we get to the Super Bowl, he deserves to start next year, just based on that alone. But there's no way in my mind you can let a talent like Trey Lance off your team.
Yeah.
He's still under team control.
Mhm.
You're going to have the cheapest quarterback room and the best quarterback room if you keep both of them. And let's say Trey does get the start next year and he has to miss a couple weeks. Let's say he's balling, right? And he has to miss a couple games. We're very confident that Brock Purdy can come in, win a couple games, and when Trey gets healthy, if he's balling, they're going to go back to him, right? Whereas vice versa, it's like if Purdy goes down for a couple games, I'm confident Trey can come in and win us 3 or 4 games in a row. So I think you can't, unless you get some overwhelming offer for one of them to where, I don't know, a team like the Ravens are not going to re-sign Lamar, and they're going to give you like a very solid player and a late first round pick or something like that for either of them. That's maybe something I would consider. But to me, like Brock's got to get to the Super Bowl. If he wins, it should be his job. If we lose, I think there should be a competition. And Trey's going to come in and want to win the job. So you have both guys and we know Brock's a competitor. We know Trey's a competitor. And that type of competitiveness is what you want out of your quarterback because they got to lead the team, right? So that's where I'm at. For me, it's you got to get to the Super Bowl and win because you just, in my opinion, between IQ, ability, not so much evidence because we haven't seen it. I think Trey is one of the top 8 most talented quarterbacks in the entire league. And it'd be a shame for somebody like the Lions to pick him up with that offensive line and those weapons. Dan Campbell's a great leader. They develop him properly. And now we have to face Trey Lance in the NFC Championship game for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. So to me, it's like you just can't let that type of talent go. Now, they're both going to be coming up on deals, so you have to figure out which one you're going to want to extend. That's a conversation for a couple years down the road. But for now, it's Trey's team right now, next year, in my opinion. Now, I'm probably one of the very few that has that opinion. But to me, you got to get to the Super Bowl and win to say, you know what, it's your job. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I think for me, yeah, Super Bowl for sure, you got to win it. But the context behind how you win it matters. Like if Purdy went out there and threw like 2 picks and didn't throw a touchdown, but our defense dominated, we won the Super Bowl like 17-10. I can't say, okay, Purdy's locked into QB1 because the whole
But you know what the narrative's going to be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But the whole point was not like, oh, either one of these guys is for sure a franchise QB. The whole point was we need to replace Jimmy Garoppolo. That's why they were comfortable taking Trey Lance, knowing he was going to be raw. It's not like they picked like an Andrew Luck type of prospect where people knew, oh, this dude's NFL ready right away. They were comfortable getting someone raw because they knew we just need to get rid of Jimmy. We need to replace this guy. We need to improve. And Brock Purdy has done that. So at this point, I'm kind of on the same page. I still think Trey's too talented to just, kind of write him off. The whole talk of, oh, they're probably going to have to trade him. That's BS. You don't do that. They kept Jimmy Garoppolo in town. I don't think they're going to let Trey Lance just walk on a rookie contract. I don't think that's going to happen. They're not going to trade him away for probably less, 100% less than what they traded to get.
They have to take the dead cap too. They got to pay the dead cap.
It's not
a smart move. Like there's no reason to do that.
Like if you go into camp, like, okay, we're going to have another training camp and offseason of a lot of quarterback arguments. That's a good problem to have though, because you're not arguing Jimmy G or Trey Lance, who's barely played. You're arguing between a guy who is taking you into a deep playoff run and a guy who has the potential to be an elite quarterback. That's a good problem to have, knowing the elite roster you have. My thing is, I think Trey could be replicating the same amount of success with the weapons that Brock Purdy has right now.
I agree.
Trey Lance in 3 of his 4 starts didn't have George Kittle. We see how big of a role George Kittle's played with Brock Purdy and their connection. He also has not gotten to play with Christian McCaffrey, so that also matters. So I think if you give Trey Lance just a string of 4 or 5 games, he's going to be fine once he gets those wrinkles out, and you got to see what you have there. But if Brock Purdy balls out and wins the Super Bowl, and he is Super Bowl MVP and completes this whole Disney movie level script that the NFL could potentially have at this point, I can't imagine going to the locker room and saying, all right, the guy who just threw like 4 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and just won Super Bowl MVP, yeah, you're going to be getting the second team reps in camp. I don't know if I can see that, especially with Trey Lance coming off the surgery. So I do think that I agree. If he wins Super Bowl MVP and they win it, I think he's locked into QB1. But I don't think that takes away Trey Lance's opportunity to win the job back in camp. And also, yes, it might make it tougher, but like you were saying, we have not had healthy quarterbacks. So one bad hit, one twist of a leg, to have one or the other to fall back onto, you're going to want to keep that insurance. Anyone thinking you trade either of these guys, you don't. Like, this is not like a Nick Foles, Carson Wentz situation.
Unless you get some overwhelming offer. Like somebody's like, we'll give you a future first, a second, and a player for Purdy. Like that's like
for me, the overwhelming offer. The overwhelming offer for me would be you're giving me Lamar Jackson. That would be the overwhelming offer for me, because then I'd be like, okay, shit, I'll take this guy over either of these guys, and I'm not even going to question it. But
Definitely.
I don't even know if I'll do it for picks, because I don't know what those picks are going to turn into. It could turn out to be someone like a Deebo Samuel. It could also turn out to be a Jalen Hurd. I don't even want to bank on doing that. I'd rather have the safety blanket, know what I have, and understand that I have 2 good options to possibly move forward with at the QB position, just because that's been the one position that has been underwhelming for this elite roster the last few years. So
definitely,
you're not getting rid of either of them. Like the Nick Foles thing, that could have been the case if it was Jimmy. but the Nick Foles situation doesn't apply to this case because Nick Foles was a backup filling in for someone who was about to win MVP. You know what I mean? So at that point, it was kind of like, oh, of course, we got to trade the backup who just filled in and had this great performance and
Carson Wentz.
capitalize that.
Carson Wentz was a QB run. He got hurt on a QB run, tearing his ACL,
Yeah.
running the ball, and it cost him an MVP. He would have won MVP that year.
Oh, yeah, he was lights out that year. And listen, like I'm I'm not we're not moving on from like an MVP level quarterback. So you still have question marks about both these guys, regardless what happens at the end of the season.
Mhm.
So I'm not trading either of them. I just need to see Purdy. I need to see Trey Lance play still next year. And for Purdy, I just need to see what he does the rest of this playoff run and how he responds next season. Now the teams will probably have a whole offseason to kind of study his tendencies and try to pick apart some of the stuff they see on film. But
Remember what happened to Jimmy? He had that crazy run, first game against
yep.
Minnesota, 3 picks.
Yep. And I was at camp. I was at camp going into that season. And I remember at the camp, it was like one of those open practices. He was missing like every downfield throw. Even the completions were like underthrown. And I saw him like throw like I think a couple picks in practice. So I'm like really frustrated, like visibly frustrated. And I knew then I was like, that's not very good body language, and that's not a really good sign from the quarterback.
Mhm.
And then he goes out there, throws those 3 picks. And then the Detroit game, which I was at the week after that, remember he threw a pick 6 to lose the game, but there was a holding call that negated it. Like
Mhm.
he did not look right after immediately going into that season. So
'Cause
that's
you
why
just
I
don't
still
know.
need to see more. Yeah, you
You
don't
just
know.
don't know.
So I'm gonna roll with keeping both of them moving forward, but I'm locked into 6. I don't give a shit. Like right now, Purdy, if he goes out there and wins 6, I'm happy. I'm not going to be pissed that it wasn't Trey or wasn't
Mhm.
somebody else. I want 6, and if Purdy does it, I think that's going to be one of the greatest stories in sports history,
I
and
agree.
I'm cool with that. And I'll be faded in Glendale because I will be at the Super Bowl, and I would love to see it.
Yeah.
But for this game, before we wrap up, give me a score prediction and a bold prediction.
I've been pretty consistent saying 30-20. I think just real quick, I think the Dallas defense is a little bit better than our scoring average. So I'll give us a field goal less. We've been scoring like 35, 34 with Purdy. So I'll say 30. I'll say we'll score 30, and I think Dallas will score a little bit higher than our points against on defense. So I'm going to say 30-20. I think that's a pretty good estimate of what I think is going to happen. I think Dallas is a little bit better of a defense than we faced before. I think their offense is a little bit better than what I faced before. So just with our scoring averages, I'll say 30-20. And I'll say bold prediction. Ooh. I'm going to say Hufanga has 2 turnovers. He's going to force a fumble and get a pick.
That was going to be one of mine. I was going to say I think Hufanga is going to get an interception. My other one defensively, I think Nick Bosa is going to be involved on a takeaway, whether he's forcing a fumble or if he's recovering one. I think
Sure.
it's going to be really fitting against Dallas too, because of the whole debate about Defensive Player of the Year between Micah Parsons and Bosa. I think Bosa is going to be involved in a really crucial, like 3rd down stop, kind of like the Geno Smith fumble recovery. And we're going to get a
Sure.
Bosa shrug, and Levi's is going to be really loud because it's going to kind of separate Defensive Player of the Year a little bit in a lot of people's minds as these two get to play on this field, or same field. My score prediction's really similar to yours. I'm going 31-20. Just
31-20.
giving us one field goal in there. So I'm going 31-20. Niners win it. I think Purdy will do solid. I don't think he's going to have like the game he had against Seattle because that was just, I don't even know if it's fair to expect that again. But I do think he's going to have a really clean, like somewhere around like 240, 250 yards, couple touchdowns, no turnovers. And because I do also expect McCaffrey to just go off, especially after what was said on that radio station. Just seems like something that's going to age really poorly. But
Yeah.
those are our thoughts on the game. Kevin, thanks for joining on again.
You're welcome.
And it was good to be back from hiatus, to be doing these every week. And hopefully we get to keep doing them. And I'll get to do a pregame show sometime in February also is what I hope to be doing. And a postgame show, assuming that I'm sobered up enough for that. But Kevin, go ahead and tell people, where they can find your socials just in case they don't follow you on socials already.
So I'm pretty much just on Twitter, a couple places. Twitter, my profile name right now is CMC Stanicow, but my ad is at SF90949. I've been doing some writing for Stadium Rant that's kind of tailed off a little bit, just been really busy, but you can find some of my articles there. You can find Chris's articles there as well. So So those are the two places that you can find me.
All right. Well, Kev, thanks for joining on again. Thank you to everybody who tuned into the show. If you came back later and watched the replay, thank you as well. It's all appreciated. It's not going unnoticed. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, improve that algorithm. I am doing a Hufanga jersey giveaway at some point. I think I'm going to do it at 350 subscribers. I'll do a Hufanga jersey giveaway. So we're at like 160 right now or something like that.
So
The last one, Tanya won it, and that was a Nick Bosa jersey. So that one I did follow through with, and I got that one to her pretty quickly. So make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the like button. I'll try to be back next week for hopefully another pregame show of an NFC Championship game. So I'll see y'all later, and let's get this W tomorrow.
Wide open, touchdown, 49ers. And to Draymond. Murray. Watch Stafford go deep, and Rodgers were able to do week 3 in that matchup. Toss to Jones, and big middle linebacker Fred Warner made the stop. The time.